It's election night 2010 in California, and the polls have just closed. Can Jerry Brown reclaim the office he hasn't held since 1983? Or will Meg Whitman's high-spending campaign pay off and land her in the governor's mansion? In the race for Senate, Carly Fiorina takes on Barbara Boxer. Can the former Silicon Valley CEO pull off an upset? Or is Senator Boxer headed back to Washington for her fourth term? And will California become the first state to legalize marijuana? Or will Prop 19 simply go up in smoke? All that, plus a complete breakdown of the national races that could reshape the balance of power in Congress. It's all next on KTLA's special election night coverage. Good evening to you. I'm Micah Ullman. In addition to the latest numbers, we'll dissect the night's biggest races with some of LA's best political analysts, including Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, former Mayor Richard Reardon, and Matt Klink with Sorrell Associates. Let's get things started tonight by taking you around the state with our first look inside the campaign headquarters. Cher Calvin leads things off at Jerry Brown headquarters in Oakland.
I'm Cher Calvin at the Fox Theater in Oakland as we are awaiting Jerry Brown to show up. He says he's going to be here after the election is called and says Latino voters are the ones who are going to help him win the governor's seat. We'll have details coming up.
I'm Glenn Walker at the Hilton in Universal City. Meg Whitman's election night party will open about 15 minutes after the polls close. Win or lose, this will be the final bar tab for the most expensive campaign in the history of California politics.
It's a tough fight to the finish between Barbara Boxer and her Republican challenger, Carly Fiorina. Some of the polls have them neck and neck, while others give Boxer a slight lead. Well, I can tell you that the supporters here at her Hollywood headquarters, they're very optimistic that she will indeed be elected to a fourth term based on her ideas about how to stimulate the economy and create jobs.
Jim Nash in Irvine, a Republican headquarters. This is supposed to be a victory party for Carly Fiorina. We'll see if it is a victory. She's been running behind in the polls. Can she pull it out? We'll see. We're live.
I'm Rebecca Hall in Orange County, where Democratic Congresswoman Loretta Sanchez is facing her toughest challenge yet since being elected 14 years ago. Her Republican opponent, Assemblyman Van Tran, is banking on the support of the 47th District's growing Vietnamese population. Considering the fact that Sanchez is a long-term incumbent in an anti-incumbent year, this race is expected to be a tight one with national implications.
We're at Prop 19 headquarters, the proposition to legalize marijuana, where people are anxiously awaiting the very latest exit polls. There's a huge party going on down here. We can't show you what they're doing there, but you can guess for yourself. And if they legalize marijuana, this party will get a whole lot bigger. A lot more to come.
The polls have just closed here in California, and the ballots are being counted, but the record number of absentee ballots this year could delay results of some very tight races. KTLA's Chip Yost live at the very busy LA County Registrar's office in Norwalk. Chip.
Yeah, this is one of those nights that reminds you just how big LA County is. Let me show you what I mean here. We are at the Registrar and Recorder's office. Every single ballot from precincts in LA County is going to go right up these steps. That's why you have LA County Sheriff's deputies on hand here. And over here, if you look over here, remember there are 4,700 precincts in LA County. So they've set up a helicopter landing area over here because some of the ballots are going to be flown in. And some of the ballots coming in, of course, are going to be absentee ballots. You alluded to those a little while ago, and those absentee ballots could become the talking point of this election. You're looking at the ballots that make this election like no other in Los Angeles County history.
In this election, we've issued more vote-by-mail ballots than ever, even more than the 2008 presidential election.
Of LA County's 4.5 million registered voters, more than 1 million of them requested absentee ballots this year. Many of those absentee ballots just arrived in the mail today. And many more will come from polling places after they close. Since signatures on mail-in ballots have to be verified, mail-in ballots received today won't be included in the official vote count until at least Friday.
The main thing that I think people are watching for is if there's a close outcome tonight in the semi-official final, there's still a lot of ballots to be counted after, during the post-election period. So if it's a close contest, it may be too early to call the outcome of that election.
Another issue that could come up in a very close race, involves isolated claims of disenfranchised voters, like the voters who showed up this morning at this precinct near USC and this one at MacArthur Park to find no equipment and no voting inspector.
There was just a woman sitting at an empty table, and I asked her where I could vote, and she said that they weren't taking any ballots because the voting inspector was arrested and put in jail.
Now, it turns out that story about the voting inspector being arrested was just a rumor that some of the poll workers had heard and passed along to voters coming in. As for what's going on here, well, since polls just closed a few minutes ago, we're told they expect the first ballots to start arriving here probably in about 40 minutes, and they say they could be here till 1 or 2 in the morning until all of them come in. We'll send it back to you in the studio.
All right, Chip Yost for us live in Norwalk. Thank you. We will have more on our local races in just a moment, but first, the big national news. The Republicans are projected to take control of the House of Representatives. Let's go live to Nicole Collins in Washington, D.C. for the latest on the national front. Nicole.
Hey, good evening, Micah. That's right. Polls are now closed in all but 2 states. And you're right. All the hype about Republicans taking control of the House and Congress now has the numbers to back it up. Republicans came into this midterm election needing to pick up 39 additional seats in the House to gain control. Now CNN is projecting Republicans will pick up at least 52 seats, giving them control of the chamber for the first time in 4 years. Now, the Senate is another story, not too clear at this point. Democrats have 57 right now. Republicans have 41. That's in this past Congress. Republicans came into this needing to pick up 10 additional seats. At this point, we now know they've picked up 4, so they need 6 more to gain control of this chamber. CNN projections point to a major shift in the House of Representatives this election night, with Republicans expected to take control. CNN also projects the first wins for Tea Party-backed candidates. Republicans Rand Paul in Kentucky and Marco Rubio in Florida win their Senate bids. And incumbent Republican Senator Jim DeMint, who is closely aligned with the Tea Party, is also projected by CNN to win re-election in South Carolina.
People have realized that freedom, that their future, that this country is in their hands. It's not in the hands of politicians.
CNN also projects Tea Party favorite Christine O'Donnell will lose her Senate bid to Chris Coons in Delaware, keeping that seat in the hands of Democrats.
While most are saying it's doom and gloom for the Democrats, our scenario all along has been the Republicans are going to win a number of seats, but there are a number of seats we think Dems will pick up.
Democrats remain hopeful about their chances to hold the Senate and for their candidates in tight races like Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid.
I'm not much at predicting things, so I'm just going to wait and see what happens.
President Obama is at the White House tonight watching TV coverage of the results as they come in. He's announced he'll hold a press conference at the White House tomorrow where he's expected to reach out to Republicans. Reporting live from Washington, I'm Nicole Collins. Micah?
All right, Nicole Collins, thank you. Here are the latest numbers from the congressional races. In the House, Democrats have a total of 110 seats after losing 26, and Republicans have a total of 157 seats thus far. In the Senate, the Democrats have 47 seats after losing 3 seats, and the Republicans have 40 seats after taking those 3. Joining us to talk about the race for Congress is LA Times Washington, D.C.-based columnist Doyle McManus. He's live via Skype from Washington, D.C. Doyle, let's begin by talking about the darling of the Tea Party here, Rand Paul, propelled to victory in Kentucky, along with Marco Rubio in Florida. Really an improbable storyline when you consider the lack of a platform, really a national movement in the part of the Tea Party.
Well, that's right, although in both cases, these turned out to be very practiced, very professional, very competent candidates. The contrast you could draw would be to Christine O'Donnell in Delaware, the other Tea Party darling, who fell way short in that race because she just wasn't quite ready for prime time. So the Tea Party message was very strong, especially in states like Kentucky and Florida, where there's a big conservative vote, but you got to have a good candidate to carry it forward.
Right, and you mentioned Christine O'Donnell there going down big time to defeat to Chris Coons there. I mean, here you have an obscure political activist that comes out of nowhere and defeats an establishment Republican in the primary there. She's backed by Sarah Palin, backed by the Tea Party, but clearly that momentum got her nowhere beyond the primary victory.
No, that's right. At this point, the Tea Party is really an insurgency within the Republican Party, it's not clear how far its appeal goes to the country as a whole. If you want to look at one closer to home, there's of course that big Nevada Senate race. Sharon Angle, the Republican candidate there, is a Tea Party candidate, a little like Christine O'Donnell. Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader, is in a fight for his life. That one we hear is absolutely a squeaker. That one is worth staying up late for.
Yeah, and you might consider what pollsters are saying in that it might be more of a protest vote against the old ways of Washington and all that Harry Reid represents, a stalwart of the Democrat-controlled Senate, and you have a relative nobody in Sharon Angle, both of them going into this election with unfavorable ratings over 50%.
Well, that's absolutely right. In fact, that is a finding that was true in a lot of states. The Obama White House is going to try and say that this was not a referendum on their stewardship of the country. But I have to say the polls indicate that it was a referendum, that there were a lot of people who voted Republican who in other years might have been swing voters or Democratic voters, and they were voting that they were unhappy with the way the Democrats have been running things.
Doyle McManus live for us, the Washington, D.C.-based columnist for the LA Times, joining us via Skype. Doyle, thank you. We'll check back in with you throughout the evening. And so we have the latest numbers coming in. The absentee ballots will be the first to be reported here. There are a couple of precincts that have reported at this point, but as we mentioned, our partners at the LA Times projecting that Jerry Brown will return to the governor's mansion and defeat Meg Whitman tonight. The polling there at 49 to 46%. Those are about 2 precincts reporting, 2% of the precincts reporting. Of course, a long way to go in that one, but LA Times projecting, again, that Jerry Brown will win. They're also projecting that Barbara Boxer will hold on to her seat and defeat Carly Fiorina. That, again, the projection by our partners at the LA Times, and we'll talk with them just as soon as we can get them on the line. In the meantime, joining me here on the set is LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa to talk about these developments. Welcome, Mayor. Thank you for coming in.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And we're talking here during the commercial break, and you say no surprise.
No surprise. I've said for some time that I thought Jerry Brown and Barbara Boxer would win. I think it's pretty clear. That old Beatles song that says, money can't buy you love. Well, in California, it can't buy you an election either. And Meg Whitman spent, what, $160 million? And notwithstanding that kind of money, different than eBay, it didn't go to the election didn't go to the highest bidder.
When you look at the national sentiment, clearly there is a wave of Republican sentiment sweeping much of the country. But from what we're seeing here early on tonight, that sentiment is stopping at the California
firewall.
Yeah.
California is a firewall. And, you know, look, and not to be partisan, because I can tell you, I know Dick Riordan, our former mayor, will be on in just a moment, and he could tell you that when he was mayor of Los Angeles, the Clinton administration, the Democratic administration in the White House was very, very supportive and friendly to Los Angeles right after the earthquake. And the same has been for me. I can tell you, I've been mayor with a Republican in the White House, with a Republican majority. You'd knock on their door, almost never get an answer, and when you did, you almost always walked away with an empty hand. Barbara Boxer just helped to deliver $546 million for a light rail line in Los Angeles. Every time we've knocked on the White House door, they've been there, whether it's for summer youth jobs, whether it was stimulus jobs for infrastructure here in LA. And what a difference a majority's made for us.
When we talk about the city of Los Angeles, facing challenges that just about every major city in this country is facing, money problems, a lot of them, and perhaps a lesson learned during the high times and the amount of money that was spent, not just here in Los Angeles, but around the country. Talk about the lessons learned and going forward, how we prevent the problems from happening again, like the problems we're seeing now.
Well, look, when you have a 14% unemployment rate in this city, a double-digit unemployment rate, or maybe 9.5% across the country, when so many people are losing their homes and really struggling to make ends meet, they're going to be angry, and particularly angry at the incumbent. And so you've seen that it's had an impact on President Obama's popularity and also on looks like the majority in the House. I know CNN and I think another affiliate has called it for the Republicans. And I'll tell you, for us here in LA, it's really meant something to have a Democratic majority. But we're going to reach across the aisle and work with them, and hopefully they'll be as supportive as the Democrats have been.
Are you concerned about any of the races you're seeing, either here locally or across the state?
I am concerned. I was concerned that Russ Feingold seems to be losing in Wisconsin. Russ has always been an independent voice, someone with a great deal of integrity, worked really well on campaign finance reform with John McCain, somebody that you would have thought would have gotten reelected, and notwithstanding, seems to be going down to defeat tonight. And I think the Senate looks closer than I would have liked because of that loss, and it's going to be a long night.
All right, Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, Mayor of Los Angeles, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Enjoy your evening. It's going to be a long one.